Have you ever wondered why Black people love cognac so much? And where does the term woke come from? And why is it so politically divisive? Well, today we're going to talk about both of those two things. But if you have your own questions, you can send those in to onemichistory.com in the contacts page. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this once again at onemichistory.com. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on my Patreon page and my Buy Me Coffee in the description below. Also, give us 5 on Apple Podcasts and support the YouTube channel. But without further ado, let's get started. Have you ever wondered why Black people love cognac so much? Ironically, while cognac originates in France, French people rarely consume it themselves. Instead, they export almost 97% of their product to the United States, who is their largest single consumer. African Americans comprise a large majority of those sales, signifying a decades-long tradition between African American consumers and cognac that dates all the way back to the 19th century. Origins of cognac, though, can be traced back to the 16th century in the southwest region of France. It is during this time that Dutch sailors discovered that they needed a way to transport wine during long journeys. They purchased French wine and endeavored to keep it drinkable for the entire voyage. Thus, this led to distillation. The product was then named brandy wine or burnt wine, which would later be called simply brandy. By the 18th, 19th centuries, burnt wine was being exported to England, Holland, Asia, and the Americas. During the First World War, more than 380,000 African Americans served in the Army, with 200,000 of them being sent to Europe. 21 years later, more than 1 million African American men and women of all branches of the United States Armed Forces served in World War II. Many Black soldiers were stationed in southwestern France, which is believed to be African Americans' first encounter with cognac. Furthermore, the connection between cognac producers and Black consumers is likely strengthened by the presence of Black artists and musicians such as Josephine Baker who performed jazz and blues in Paris clubs during that interwar period. Cognac's popularity with African Americans was likely due to its representation in a country which celebrated Black culture rather than marginalizing it. Even after the soldiers returned home, the love of cognac continued in the Americas. The main liquor of choice was whiskey. This was a drink that was often named after Confederate leaders, sending a message of exclusion. In light of this, it's no surprise that African Americans sought an alternative to the drink. In the post-World War II era, cognac producers placed increased emphasis on the American markets due to the emergence of Scotch as a rival on French shelves. To overcome this competition, cognac producers began targeting the African American demographic who had developed a taste for the spirit. Hennessy in particular placed advertisements in Black publications, a decision that was extremely rare during the time. Hennessy featured ads in Ebony and in Jet with Black models early in 1951 and depicted some of the more positive aspects of African American life. By the 1990s, though, cognac had acquired its image of being favored by an older crowd. Its popularity began to decline. However, references to cognac by rap artists and rap songs would change this image of an older crowd. The release of Buster's Pass the Cavassier in 2001 caused a 30% surge in Cavassier sales. Collaborations with rappers and other cognac brands also increased the overall cognac sales in the United States by a similar percentage. In response, the 4 major cognac brands, Cavassier, Hennessy, Martell, and Remy Martin, have studied the U.S. market closely and tailored their products accordingly. For example, Cavassier discovered that Americans were buying cognac and Moscato wine separately at liquor stores and mixing them together, so they would release a pre-mixed product to save customers a step. Today, while the United States is the largest consumer of cognac, it's believed that the African American community accounts for somewhere to 60 to 80% of sales of cognac in the United States. Next up in this episode, we're going to talk about the history of the word woke. Have you ever wondered where the word woke comes from and how it became such a politically divisive term? Before woke evolved into an all-encompassing term to describe left political ideology, or for shorthand for people on the left in general, or even worse, weaponized as a soft N-word. But before 2014, the phrase woke and stay woke was simply a call for African Americans to be on the lookout or be careful in a system that was created to be unjust. The concept of wokeness can be traced back to the early 20th century in a call to action by Jamaican philosopher and social activist Marcus Garvey. In 1923, Marcus Garvey called for global black citizens to wake up Ethiopia, to wake up Africa. This call to action aimed to foster social and political awareness, and one of the earliest known examples of wokeness as an idea of black consciousness waking itself up. A few years later, 1938, the phrase "stay woke" turned up in a song about the Scottsboro Boys, a protest song by blues musician Hughie Ledbetter, aka Leadbelly. The song chronicles the unjust trial and conviction of 9 black African-American teenagers in Scottsboro, Alabama in 1931 who were wrongfully accused of raping 2 white women. Leadbelly said that he met the Scottsboro defendant's lawyer and introduced him to the men himself. "When I made this little song down there," Leadbelly says, "I also advised everybody to be a little careful when they go down there, and it's best to stay woke and keep your eyes open." Leadbelly uses the phrase "stay woke" as a symbol of African Americans' need to stay aware of the dangers of white America and the racial motivations that they face. This use became the most common and most consistent use of the phrase ever since. 1962, the New York Times published an article by black novelist William Melvin Kelly entitled, "If You Woke, You Dig It. No Mickey Mouse Can Be Expected to Follow Today's Negro Idiom Without Hip Assist." Kelly's piece discussed the origins of the beatnik culture and language, such words like cool and dig, and highlighted the fact that these terms did not originate with white America, but with black jazz musicians. He argued that to understand language in this culture, one needed a hip assist from African American culture. Kelly's article discusses the ever-changing nature of Black American vernacular and the importance of preserving it from exploitation or alteration by white people. Given that this is the earliest mainstream reference of the term woke, is an opinion piece that warned against the habit of white Americans appropriating Black vernacular. In a way, it seems that the word even predicted its own fate. Today, of course, the word woke and its derivatives, such as politically correct, social justice warrior, cancel culture, have been adopted by conservative groups to insult people on the left. The phrases have become so negatively charged, they've been labeled as skunk terms. This has led to people abandoning their use, as the malicious intent of those words have made them so unpleasant that they can't be employed in their original context. Thank you. I'm your host, Country Boy, and this has been One Mic History. I'm going to continue with this mini-series, and if you have questions or you just want to leave your comments, like I said, you can do so at onemichistory.com in the contact page. Thank you for listening, and peace.